Well, hi guys. Welcome back to Miss Willa's Book Club. I'm your host Shelby, and I have a special guest with me today. Kallie, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Kallie. I am in the Denver local book club for Miss Willa's Book Club. And I'm so excited to talk about the book today. I also just started a podcast with my best friend, which has been like so fun to talk to Shelby
I love
about.
it.
And we're doing a Twilight reread podcast. Neither of us have read them since the books were like big. Like I
Yeah.
haven't read it since I was like 14.
Same here.
Yeah. And I've only read like the original 4. So
Ooh.
we're starting off with reading Twilight and Midnight Sun, which is like Edward's POV.
Oh my gosh, that's so
Yeah.
fun.
Yes. So we're tandem reading it, and then we're also watching the coordinating like movie clips.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. So it's like so fun. It's like hilarious. Like the more we talk about it, the more we're like, wait. Also, like, there's so many people still so into Twilight, which like cracks me up. It's been out for 19 years.
Shut up. It's really been that long?
Book 1 came out.
Oh my gosh.
Like so long ago. Wait, no, that can't be right. My math.
No, actually, I think that sounds right.
2005?
Yeah.
Is when Twilight came out?
Because I think I would have been in like so we keep having this thing that happens when we're recording that it'll like pop up different emojis and stuff. So disregard that.
Great. It's like fact checked. It's like, no, bad math.
I know it says no. But that sounds about right though, because I guess I would have been in 6th grade and I think I read them in 7th.
Yeah. I like read them in middle school. Yeah. So so it's been so fun. It's been so fun.
Oh my god.
So
that's
anyways,
so
it's called Glittery Musings. You can find us on like Instagram and TikTok at Glittery Musings. And that's also the name if you search us on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or YouTube. So
I love it. That's so fun. And to
Yeah.
do a podcast with your best friend too is literally just like such a blast.
I know, I'm so excited.
It's so fun.
Yeah.
And now I feel like we've got like 30 new best friends from our book club too. So it's such a blast. So today we're going to be talking about The Familiar. Oh, it's like not in focus. The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo. And this was actually our August book club pick. And I unfortunately was not able to go to book club this weekend because, as you can probably hear, I have been pretty sick for the past few days. So not fun, but I cannot wait to hear what everybody said at book club.
It was such a polarizing book.
Oh, that's crazy.
I couldn't believe it. We had like a smaller group than normal, but literally, so 6 girls came, 3 of us rated it 4 stars or higher.
Okay.
So there was like 4, 4.5 for most people. The other 3 girls DNF'd it.
Oh, like, stop it.
Didn't even finish. And like,
oh my god.
I know. I was so surprised. So it was definitely like a different vibe of book club, having half the people being like, should I even finish it? Like, tell me if it's worth it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that's crazy.
I was in the 4-star group. I rated it 4, like an even 4 stars.
Love it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I ended up giving it to, but probably until I want to say like the 75% mark, I was like, do I want to finish this?
Yes.
I was kind of feeling the same way.
Yeah, I like get where they were coming from. I feel like I was like not engaged for the first half.
Absolutely.
And I was overtly like lost for the first 25%.
Me too. Absolutely. I was so confused. And I even read like the little insert like on the front of the book here, which I don't normally do.
Same.
And I had been seeing this book all over TikTok for like months. And so I was super excited about it when it was chosen for book club, and then I was so disappointed. Like halfway through, I was like, what is even going on?
Yeah. It's so different. The other thing that was really weird for me is I've been reading Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo.
Oh,
Yes. And this was a radically different writing style. Like
really?
so different, which also I feel like some of my 4-star is like I was
Uh-huh.
so impressed that
Mm-hmm.
she could write so differently.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So that was definitely part of it. But yeah,
Yep.
like so different from
Oh
Shadow and
my
Bone.
gosh.
And we had some of the girls in the group were talking about Ninth House, which is
Yep, I've read that
also
one.
okay. And they were like loved that. What did you think?
Mm-hmm.
Like comparing Ninth House and this, because those are
I
both her
loved it.
adults.
Yeah, I loved Ninth House. I thought, again, though, it was pretty confusing to get into. And then it kind of starts to come together, and the ending was beautiful. So I thought that that part was pretty similar to this. Although, I don't know. I feel like I'm like a little torn because I thought that the writing was so beautiful. Like the way she wrote everything and the way she described things was just, it was poetic and I loved it. I
Yeah.
just didn't love that I didn't know what was going on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
true. It also was like not clear. Like, were we
Yeah.
supposed to like the characters or hate the characters?
You know, I literally have no idea. And that was one of the things I was actually going to ask you. Like, what did you think about them? Because,
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I mean, I loved they were very refreshing characters,
mm-hmm.
especially like I'm coming out of like a romantasy slump
Yes.
where I'm like, if I read about another 17 to 20-year-old
Yes.
girl who goes from like struggling, unsure of herself to
Yes.
like marrying the immortal, whatever, like I can't.
hmm
So like this character or the main character is so different.
hmm
She is like super down on herself.
Oh,
Everyone
yeah.
like half the comments people make to her are about how like ugly she is.
I
So
know.
sad. Yeah, but I did get into them more later, and I feel like a turning point particularly was with the familiar. When you get
hmm
his backstory, I feel like I was more
Yes.
invested.
I honestly feel like that's where the turning point for me was too. Because I
Okay.
was like, who is this guy? I don't like him. They're just speaking negatively about him. He had no redeeming qualities. And they just kept saying the familiar. And so I was like, what does that even mean?
Yes.
I was like, I don't understand.
I went into the book where the only concept I'd heard of a familiar was in the show What We Do in the Shadows. And so
Oh.
I was like, wait, is this a vampire novel?
Yeah. Okay, honestly though, with like the cover and just from what I've heard about
Yes.
like being dark and gothic and like it's fantasy, that's kind of what I was thinking too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, I really liked her concept though, between surrounding the small miracles. I thought that
Mm-hmm.
was cool, but like still even after finishing it, I'm like, what does that mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And that was one of like the biggest critiques people had from book
mhm.
club. And a reason like a lot of people like DNF'd and basically
Oh,
decided they weren't gonna finish it
yeah.
was because like I think if you are into fantasy for
mhm.
like the world building and like kind of this like creative other like how do people set up their magic structures and stuff like that,
Right.
like you don't get those answers.
I know.
And I was talking to my husband about this afterwards because it's so unique, like a
Mhm.
historical fiction fantasy,
Yeah.
which is cool. But I think like the issue with it is they go in assuming you know all about the context because it's like the Spanish
Exactly.
Inquisition and
Mhm.
like they're talking about like heretics and like getting arrested for
Yes.
heresy and like all these
Right.
things that are like, well, they just assume you know
I
all this
know.
context instead of like building up the world. It's like, oh, you should have learned about this in history.
Yes.
And now we're just adding like a hidden
Uh-huh.
magic layer, which
Right.
I think then is like, yeah, I don't know. If you're more into maybe historical stuff, maybe you're into it. I think for me, it wasn't as good of
Yeah.
a fantasy book in that way.
And I felt the same way. I couldn't decide while I was reading it, I couldn't decide if it was a fantasy or a romance or a little bit of both. Like I couldn't pinpoint what it was actually supposed to be.
Yeah.
Even though she
Yeah.
describes it as a historical fantasy romance, I was like, I'm only getting some of it here and there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of light on the romance and the fantasy.
Right, exactly. So I was like, is this just supposed to be like a historical book?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But also, so you lived in Spain, right?
Yes.
Okay, me too. And
So cool.
it was so cool. Like,
Yeah.
that was the one part where I was like, I could actually put myself kind of like in the position. So I
Mm-hmm.
lived in Toledo. And so
Okay. Yeah.
when they were talking
Yes,
about
they
when they were
talk
like,
about it.
yeah, when they were like, oh, this is basically where we do the trials and you have Zoco Dover, I was like, I know exactly where these places are. Like, it still hasn't changed very much. And like where they hold all the trials and everything, they turned it into a movie theater. And I've watched
Oh,
movies there. Like, it's an actual place.
that's
Yeah.
so cool.
Isn't that so
Oh my gosh.
interesting? I was
Yes.
like, wow, this is a really dark part of the book, but I'm just so giddy.
I was there.
I've been there.
That's
I
so
just
cool.
loved it. Yeah, that was a really cool aspect. And like, so how did you feel about some of like the Spanish translations and everything? Did you feel like it matched with the story?
Yeah, I think so. I think they did like a really good job.
Mm-hmm.
Again, like Leigh Bardugo, like you said, like very poetic. And I think
Yes.
how she incorporated Spanish
Mm-hmm.
was really interesting. And the time
Yeah.
she chose to translate the Spanish and the time she chose not to translate the Spanish was
Yes.
also really interesting.
I completely agree.
Yes, and I think that had me a little more engaged
Uh-huh.
than maybe other people.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, one like I think thing that's key if you haven't lived in a Spanish culture is like the Don and Donna, like with the
Yes.
names, like people
Uh-huh.
were really struggling in the audiobooks.
Oh, I know. I could
Mhm.
totally see that. Did you listen to the audiobook?
I didn't. I read it.
Oh, so I went back and forth like I do.
Yes.
And I thought it was so well spoken throughout the audiobook. Like, it was
Mm,
actually really good. And the person who did it must have spoken like Spanish because
yeah.
it was beautiful.
Hmm.
I know. And I was like, oh, I really love this. And then I
Yeah.
would go back to reading it and I'm like, I think I just want to listen to it.
Yeah. That makes sense, especially if like their accent is good. Like,
It was so
oh,
good.
yeah. Yeah, I was in like the opposite side of Spain. I lived on
Oh,
the
yeah.
southern coast when I was in Spain. So
Oh my
I
gosh.
wasn't like, I was there.
But I'm
But
sure
it's
you knew
still,
Madrid a little bit.
yes, yeah, and still like very cool, like culture wise, and
Oh, yeah.
obviously like had learned a lot about like the Spanish Inquisition. And
Yeah.
then like, yeah, what was interesting was to think about like the like cultural aspects of like where Spain is today and
Yes.
like when I was living there and being like how interesting would it be if like
Yes.
this like magic system was in place. So that
Mhm.
part was really cool.
Yeah, and I liked that it was just something a little bit differently. I feel like in a lot of the other, like, ACOTAR, Throne of Glass, or any other fantasies we read, they're kind of like medieval England.
Yeah.
And so this was just very different, and so I liked that. I just feel like it didn't hit home as much as maybe I would have liked it to.
Yeah, it definitely is pushing I think like culturally more like
Mhm.
17th century than it is
Yeah.
like Spain, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Just like she's like a scullion, you know, like a maid
Yeah.
in the house and stuff like that. Like those are obviously just like older terms.
Yeah,
So, yeah. Yeah.
I love it.
Mhm.
Well,
Mhm.
what was your favorite part of the book?
Ugh. I don't okay. I really getting the backstory on the familiar, I think maybe was my favorite because I was so intrigued and went into the book, like I just said, being like, is this going to be about vampires? Is this, like, is she getting a familiar? Is she like, I just was, like, so intrigued about, like, what that even was going to mean, because I feel like the concept of a familiar, like, shows up so differently across fantasy.
Yes, it does.
Yes. So I think I really liked that aspect. I also did, like, I liked the romance between them.
Yeah, it was cute.
And, like, I did not know it was a romance going in. And then it just kind of, like, shows up, you know? Like, it's not like a build with, like, this banter. It's not like enemies to lovers, really, like, not in the sense of that trope. It's just like all of a sudden they're like, are we into each other?
Oh yeah, we are.
Right.
That's exactly what it seemed like. That was a perfect way to say it.
Yeah. And again, like, I was kind of into it. Like, yeah, I don't know. What about for you?
I think my favorite part of it was actually, like, a super dark part. So when her aunt is, like, traveling, and then they stop on the edge of the road, and they're like, okay, we're done. Like, she's like, oh, I know this is my time. Like, I'm taking one of you with me, basically.
Yeah.
And she just, like, went with no qualms, no fighting, no arguing. I was like, all right, bravo.
That's such a dark part of the book.
I know it was. And it's horrible because I was so encaptured in that moment where, like, I had this feeling beforehand that she wasn't going to make it down there, that something was going to happen. And I loved the way that it happened. It's so dark, but I thought it was just like, I loved that she just like, you know what, I'm taking you with me. Like, if I'm dying, you're dying too.
Yeah. Fair.
I know.
It was kind of badass, to be honest.
It was pretty badass.
Yeah.
And then, so after that part where she is now in Toledo in the dungeons, I was a little confused, and I felt like I kind of had a hard time keeping some of the characters together and, like, who was who. And so I was just a little bit like, okay, so now we're in the dungeons, but it seemed like a totally separate part of the book.
Yeah.
And so I was just, like, a little bit kind of thrown off guard. Like, it didn't feel like it really connected.
Yeah. It honestly, like, could have been a different book, except it wasn't long enough to be a different book. But, like, tone-wise, it was, really different. And, like, I was kind of surprised by how much of the book took place with her being, like, in the dungeon, because she, like, kind of, like, you think she's gonna get out, and then she's like, no, back in.
Yes, I know.
Like,
I was like, wait, where's this gonna go?
Okay, but speaking of her aunt, I thought it was so interesting how, like, the beginning of the book, right, the main character, she is so, like, invested in being like, if only I could be like my aunt. Like, if only. And then, like, you know, Victor becomes her patron, and she's at, in some ways, a more elevated place than her aunt, in some ways kind of the same level. And she realizes that, like, all of them are on this, like everyone is a servant in some ways to someone, and it's like this cyclical, like, everyone is under someone else's thumb and, like, being controlled. And I just thought that was, like, so clever and accurate to be like, no, there's also, like, your problems just don't go away because all of a sudden you, like, have a wealthier person, like, controlling you.
Because you're still being controlled.
Right. And, like, even, like, in that scene, like, even in the aunt's death, right? Like, I feel like that's part of why she just, like, accepted it. Because she was like, this is what Victor has, like, paid for. I'm not getting out of it. Like, even in death, she was, like, controlled by him and knew that she wasn't getting out of it, which was so interesting.
Yeah.
And that I feel like that's kind of what, like, Louisa's, like, going against the whole book.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. And I really liked that was also the same reason that our main character like stood up for herself at the very end too. Was because
Mhm.
she was like, "You know what? Like if we don't die now, we are still going to be controlled. Like we have to fake our death. We have to be dead so that nobody questions it because otherwise we're not going to be free."
Mhm. Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah.
So then what did you think about their death?
Ugh. So many thoughts.
Mhm. Oh,
Okay.
same.
I I was waiting for
Mhm.
like the twist, you know?
Yes.
Like, and in some ways it was a twist, but I think I was expecting that the twist was going to be this super clever way he got out of the bargain, you
Mhm.
know? And like he was going to like get his luck back and have his freedom because
Right.
like she was going to figure out some like clever way to like break the curse.
Yeah.
But like no, that's not what happens.
I know. I
They just
know.
like find a loophole. Like
Exactly. So he just basically has the same exact curse. He dies every single morning and then she brings him back?
yeah.
Like,
What?
what?
That's so unsatisfying.
I totally agree. Like, I'm so glad that they get to live their own free little happy life. But, like, that was just not where I thought it was gonna go at all, and I don't think I liked the twist.
No, I did not. And it's so unsatisfying.
I
Like,
agree.
and maybe one of the girls in the book club brought up that if you go in with the idea that this book is a tragedy, it's way more enjoyable.
Oh, I
Like,
could actually see that.
yeah, which I like kind of get. And so then she was like upset they got together
Oh
at the
my
end.
gosh.
She
So,
was like, it should have,
honestly,
yeah, like it should have just stayed a tragedy where one of them
yeah.
had to sacrifice and like that's life. Like
Yes.
that would have been more dramatic,
That
you
and it
know?
probably would have been pretty satisfying too because of her speech while they were, like, on the pyre or, like, right
Yeah.
before it when she was like, "I don't wanna be a slave to anybody else. I don't wanna be anybody else's servant, and so I'm just gonna die." I was like, "Wow, that's very honorable." Like, you'll not only break the curses, but, like, you won't be a servant to anybody anymore, and I liked that, and so I
Yeah.
didn't love that they actually found a loophole and oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah, it does feel like kind of anticlimactic for like the
Mhm.
themes that they're building, but maybe again, like just as we're talking about it, I'm thinking
Yeah.
like maybe that's part of the point is like even in this, like they still couldn't get away from Victor. Like
Yeah.
even like in like
Mhm.
her like, you know, they fake the death whatever, like it still doesn't work. Like
Yeah.
they'll always be beholden to him,
Yeah.
which is just like very interesting.
Right, and it kinda goes against what they wanted, though.
Right. Right.
It's just odd.
Yeah, it's such a different book, which is why I think even though I was not like it was not a satisfying ending, I didn't like the twist and it was hard to get into, but it was still a 4-star for me.
That's good, I love it. So what was it exactly that made it that 4-star for you then?
I think because it's just so different. Like
Yeah.
I didn't expect basically any part of it.
Yeah.
And not because the twists were so clever, but because it was just like, shouldn't they get a break at some point? Or
Right.
shouldn't, like, okay, also, we have to talk about like the trials
I
because
was literally just
also,
thinking that.
yes, like, because that again, where it's like the trials and like maybe, you know, you
Mhm.
start to get a little more plot, you're starting to build some tension,
Yep.
some stakes, and then it's like, oh, that's also meaningless. Like, I think
Yes!
the theme of the book is like you can strive and it's meaningless, but like you can
Yeah.
make the best of it, I guess. Which is
Which,
like
like, how sad.
depressing, so
I
depressing.
know. Oh my gosh. So let's talk about those trials. So I remember the last one distinctively, but what were the first couple? I was
Okay,
literally so lost. I was like, so now they're trials? I was like, what?
yes. Okay, yeah. So it's like there's going to be 3 trials.
Mhm.
The first one is to like show that you have magic. Like it's basically to like show off that it's spectacular.
That was when her Donna was like trying to get her to do magic in front of people, right? Or was that even before that?
That's before that even.
See, I was like, was that even included in the trials? Like,
I know. I feel like we have to backtrack like so much now.
I know.
We went all the way to the end. Now we got to go all the way back to the beginning.
I
know. Yeah. So that's like the first trial is where the girl or the woman that goes before is like a fraud, and she shatters all the glass. And then so Louisa is gonna do a bigger version of what she's been doing at Valentina's house. So she's gonna like shatter all the glass and then put it back together for her like miracle.
Yeah.
But then like, you know, it's like some sabotage. And so she shatters all the glass and turns it into a giant constellation that's like the constellation of the not the assistant of the king. Yeah. Like whatever. His like second in command, but not the prince.
Yeah.
Yeah, like why can't like I think the hand of the king would be what it would be in Game of Thrones, but it's not called that. Anyways, yeah, look it up. So he's trying to like get back his honor. Anyway, so she makes it into the constellation. So
was it the champion? Or
no, that's what they're competing to be the champion.
Yeah. I don't know. Anyways.
Yeah. Anyways. Yeah, Perez is his name. I don't know if that's helpful when you're
I don't remember what they kept calling him.
Right. He's like the disgraced something of the king.
Yeah.
Anyways.
I don't know. Anyways.
Yeah, if you read the book, you know who we're talking about.
Yeah.
So, and then the second one is they bring in someone really high up in the Catholic Church who's going to come judge if it's holy or if it's witchcraft. And that's the weird puppet show.
Yes.
Which I also don't, I'm not totally tracking how that was what defined like their response to whenever they paused and quizzed them in the puppet show was like supposed to define if they were holy or not.
I was very confused during that portion.
Yeah. Well, then, it was a little weird. And the third trial was supposed to be to impress the king.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Who didn't even show up, right?
Right. Yeah.
Well, and then so during the second trial when oh my gosh, what was the other guy who was like basically pit up against our main character?
Oh, the olive farmer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the olive. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh my God, me neither. And I'm like, I would see them on the page and know exactly who they were. But then I like can't recall it.
Yeah, I know.
But when it comes out that he was the one that had been sabotaging all of this, that was a twist that I liked.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah. And I also really liked in the prison when then you got the information that, again, everyone's names have escaped me.
Oh, Toyota. I do know that one. That one is Toyota.
Okay, yes.
She was the girl.
Yes. Yeah. So when you find out how he also manipulated her, like, so interesting. So I liked that, like, level of kind of, like, intrigue and building up.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, and the betrayal, like, mid, like, fight, like, you know, like, our main character is finally like, we're gonna have an alliance to, like, go against the king and prove him. Like, again, she thinks she's getting around the system. And this dude, like, turns on her, like, mid presentation. But it turns out none of it matters because why? Perez did not care. The king didn't come, and Perez was not even trying to get a champion. He was trying to just flee.
Yeah, the whole reason that everybody was like, oh, guess what? He didn't actually show up. He's fleeing somewhere else. And I'm like, I literally thought, so this all means nothing.
Yes. Like, and I also had a thought during this section, which is like, Perez, like, yeah, he's really well connected to the king, but he's basically like disgraced and low key an outlaw at this point.
Yeah.
And it's kind of illegal. Like, it's right on the line if it's illegal for
Mhm.
all of them to have magic. So it just seems so bold to like go to this guy who's an outlaw to do a
Yeah.
giant show to like prove in front
Mhm.
of all these witnesses that you can do a thing that's also kind of illegal.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
surprise, surprise, that backfired on every single person involved.
Okay, literally,
Yeah.
it literally backfired on everybody. And that's where at the very end when they're being burned for basically witchcraft, I was like, "Hold up. Wasn't their entire point in this entire book was for them to show that they have magic?
Yeah.
And now they're being burned for it?"
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I was like, "What in the world?" And, like, I felt like it just kept going, like, back and forth, like, I couldn't keep up.
Yeah. And I thought it was also really interesting that such a big tension point throughout the book is that she is Jewish and
Yeah,
she's
yeah,
really worried that they're going to find out and she's doing all these things to avoid suspicion.
yeah.
Never came up. Was not
Literally never
relevant.
came up. No,
No one was
not at all.
suspicious.
No, and I was like, "Why did that even get brought up?" Because it even got brought up at the end when
Yeah.
I think it was while she was in the cells and she was talking about Judaism, and I was like, "Wait, that never came back up."
Mm-hmm. Which again, like, led me to think, like, maybe I'm missing something historical, or if I knew
Mhm.
more about like Jewish traditions or something specifically aligned with that, like maybe something would be connecting more for me. But
Yeah.
like I felt like we were missing, like I felt like I was supposed to read a prequel to this book that I didn't read.
Yeah. Okay, that's honestly how I felt too. It was kind of like having a secret that you're not being let in on,
Yeah. But
which I guess
and
we
then
kinda were.
right, and I kept waiting for the twist where
Yes.
then like, oh, that's the thing and now everything
Yeah.
makes sense and they're
Mhm.
going to escape Victor and like it's all working out.
Yeah.
Nope, didn't
No,
happen.
literally not at all. And it's funny because I've even gone and listened to some of Leigh Bardugo's, like, interviews and stuff about it, and I'm like, "I still don't understand." Like, it did not help my understanding of the book literally at all.
That's so interesting.
I
Now I want to go look
know.
them up. Huh.
I know, and I even went through Goodreads, and that's where I actually saw that, another person from our book club, Haley, had
Yeah.
DNF'd it, and I was like,
Yes.
"Oh my gosh," I was like, "I can't believe that people, like, DNF those books so hard." But I was
Yes.
looking through some of the comments, and a lot of people are saying that, but then there's so many people just, like, absolutely raving about it too, where I'm
Mhm.
like, "Okay, this book is just so polarizing," and I'm like, why? Like, what
Yeah.
makes a book that way, I guess?
Yeah. Yeah. I think because it is like it just goes against what we expect story
Mhm.
structure to be, what we want, like expect characters,
Yeah.
their outcome. And so it felt like so unique in the
Yeah.
genre in so many ways. And like Leigh Bardugo's writing is beautiful.
Oh my
Like
gosh,
it
yeah.
is, it's like lovely to read.
Mhm.
But yeah, like, so if you're a person who's like, I need like satisfying
Yeah.
endings, this is not a book for you.
No, not at all.
Like, it leaves a lot open. There's
Mhm.
a lot like, it's not like happy, you know?
Exactly, it's not, and it's like, I don't even know what it was going for. Like, I hate to say it, but I feel like with, like, plot, I wonder if this needed another draft.
Mm,
Or if it was supposed to be confusing and it was supposed to leave you like that.
yeah, yeah. I think that's interesting. Yeah, I'm with you. And like that idea again, like, of like, is it supposed to be a tragedy? And like,
Yeah.
is the point of the book you can't escape, like everyone's a master,
Mhm.
like everyone has a master in some way
Yeah.
and like you can't escape that. And if that's the point of the book, I wish it was more clear that that was the
Agreed.
point of the book, you know?
Yeah.
And I think because it's so subtle and it's so nuanced, you kind of
Mhm.
leave and you're like, is that what she's trying to say, or
Right.
is it not? Which again, I think some people are into that style of writing.
Mhm.
And like I think a lot of people aren't,
I know, I
So
felt like for me it was just really hard because say a book that's so captivating like ACOTAR, like the messages are so clear and like in your
yeah.
face, and I
Yeah.
feel like even the writing, even though there's little like Easter eggs and everything in it, like it's so much easier to read and get the message and be just like sucked into it, where
Yeah.
this one just kind of felt like it was like random thing after random thing after random thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was not like the struggles that she went through
Yeah.
didn't like help her move forward,
Not at all.
Like,
Right.
and again, that's what makes me think like, okay, well, maybe the message has to be about like, isn't that kind of like life? Or like there's something
Yeah.
like poetic to that,
Mhm.
which again, like that's cool. But that, if that is not your expectation going in, like,
I
you're just
know.
like, are you kidding? Like, what? He's gonna
Yeah.
flee and now you're all getting arrested because you're associated with him? Like,
I know. I know. I and
what?
then I didn't love the jump too, like, when she was getting away after that
Mm,
3rd trial, like, everybody's like, "Get her away. Run, go."
yeah.
And then she just wakes up in the prison. I was like, "Oh, that was abrupt."
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's abrupt from you get like 3 POVs on that
Yes.
scene specifically, and for
Yes.
everyone, it's abrupt.
Mhm.
Like
Yep.
the familiar, abrupt, he gets
Mhm.
shot. The
Yep.
like Valentina and her husband, super abrupt. Like
Right. Yes.
crazy.
I
Mm-hmm.
know, and I feel like that could maybe that was another reason that even though it was from, like, this, like, omnipotent, like, person, like, watching everything from
Uh-huh.
above, I
Yeah.
wish that the POVs would have been a little bit more clear, because in the beginning, I thought I was reading all from our main character's point of view, and then it just was like, "Oh, now we're switching. Oh, now we're switching again," and it was a little confusing.
Yeah, it was not clear. That was another big complaint
Mhm.
at like book club, was that people were like, put like a mark or something, like to
Yes.
just like switch one paragraph to the next was like
Right.
too much.
Yeah, it was.
Which is super fair. Super
Mhm.
fair, especially in a book where people have like really similar names, and like
Yes.
if you don't speak Spanish, it all feels like very, like
Mhm.
it can be very confusing, like the names
Absolutely.
specifically.
And even for somebody who does, I was still like, "Wait."
Right,
It's like,
like
"Who?"
clearly where we're like mixed up on the name still. Like,
I know.
it's so funny.
You know that
Yeah.
one guy who did that one thing?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Obviously.
I know. Well, it was kind of funny too, like, even thinking back, like, another confusion point for me during that 3rd trial, I was like, "What are they even trying to build?" Like, that just, like, didn't make sense to me.
Yeah, like a giant cross was the
Yeah, but then
goal,
it was,
maybe?
like, on the I couldn't tell if it was, like, supposed to be parallel or if it was actually, like, in the air.
Oh, yeah. I
So
imagined it
confusing.
in my head as like in the air, and
Yeah.
then him turning like the cross section into the mast of like the boat with then the
Oh,
sails, and the ship
yep.
under it.
Okay, that makes sense because I was
Yeah.
like, "Are they trying to, like, get to the ship? Are they putting it on the ship?" I was like, "What in the world is happening right now?"
Yeah, that's how I imagined it, which also I think is really, again, like a super interesting concept of like
Yeah.
what is more valuable to a king in like
Yep.
17th century Spain, of like this idea of like appearing like the most holy. Is that
Yeah.
what attracts a king? Or is it like the person who can build him weapons, to like
Yeah,
conquer more people?
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And it's cool because not only do we have the concept that like everybody has a master, but we kind of get the opposite too. Like you have the king, like literally everybody underneath him is the one that's like building him up. And you kind of even
Mm.
see that with our main character when she's like, "Oh, now I'm better than my aunt." And so now she's like just one step above.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, the one character who does get a kind of satisfying arc
Mhm.
is somebody who I hated in the beginning of the book.
Oh, which one?
Which is Donna Valentina.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, I agree with this. I agree.
In the beginning, literally the worst. Like,
literally so awful.
The definition of taking your anger out on somebody else below you because you're frustrated. Like, she's so, I mean, literally abusive, like verbally, physically, like she's awful. And I feel like, you know, we do get a nice arc of her kind of realizing like the value of other people and like finding herself a little bit and just being like, also like the message of like, she like can admit what she wants kind of without shame, and then she actually gets it. Which, yeah, love that.
I know.
And like the drama, like can you imagine like the local drama of like, you have heard for months your chef complain about her son being in love with this playwright. And then like plot twist, you meet the playwright and you end up in love with her as a woman. Like, and just like the scandal it would have been in the 17th century. Like,
I mean, because it would still be a scandal now.
Yeah,
so I couldn't even imagine.
No.
Oh man, but in the beginning, I could automatically tell, like, you have one scene where she's basically beating our main character, and then after the fact, she like says something about the husband, and I was like, oh, she's acting like this because she feels inferior to him, so she needs to feel superior to somebody else, and she's taking it out on her. And I was like, oh my gosh. But I love that we kind of see that change throughout the book, and she has a lot of character growth. In fact, I want to say she was like one of the only ones who had any character growth.
Yes, literally. Yeah, even the familiar who does kind of like change.
Yeah, okay, like, I used to say that too.
But like, he changes more physically almost than he does emotionally, because like it is, you know, again, like reading Twilight in tandem.
Oh, yeah.
Like I'm reading it at the same time as I was reading The Familiar. And it is interesting because this idea of like a mortal man never thought he would find love. All of a sudden, like, baffled that he's in love with this seemingly plain looking person. And how did I ever think that they were unattractive? Because now I'm obsessed with them.
Exactly.
And like that is very similar. Like, that's especially reading Midnight Sun, like that is like Edward.
I love it so much.
Yes.
Well, and then especially I got Twilight vibes when it was like at the end where he steps out of the king's, like, what I pictured is like you have a line of the king and his men, and Santanhill like steps out, and I was like, he's stepping out in front of the Volturi. Like, that is exactly what's going on. And they're like, his eyes were white, his face was white, his hair was white.
It was so many vampire vibes for no vampires being in this book.
I know, and I almost wish he would have been a vampire rather than had a curse.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I definitely can see that. I'm also like, the curse was like one of the most intriguing parts to me, so I'm like, I don't know what the book would be without the curse.
Okay, you're just like absolutely right, because the curse was the most important part. It was the whole reason why he was even doing it.
Cursed vampire, maybe that would have been something.
Oh, that would have been interesting. It definitely would have added an extra like interesting aspect to it. So
yeah. But like the difference then being, right, like in Twilight you get like, you know, immortal Edward all of a sudden is like shocked he's in love, but then like he then grows a lot as a character because of that. And that just did not happen in this book at all. Like, there was not like character growth of like, now he's in love and he has to change a perspective, and like this is shifting like his world. It doesn't even really shift like his actions that much. It does. I mean, specifically the scene when they're leaving the third trial, like he kind of is going against Don Victor to like help her, but that's kind of like the extent of it.
Right. And it
Otherwise,
wasn't
he's just
even
like,
until, like, the very end, too, where he,
yeah.
like, tries to sacrifice himself for her, but
Mm-hmm.
she was like, "No, I'm not doing that."
Yeah.
That was, like, the only part where I was like, "Oh, there's some growth from him, like, he's realized what means more in this life." And
Yeah.
so but if it doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah. Which honestly, I was kind of into that he was like, I'm finally, like, I've been so afraid of death. I'm willing to live
Yeah.
this miserable life this whole time. I'm finally ready to, like,
Mhm.
accept, like, that's his character growth, right? Is
Right,
he's finally
right.
like, I am willing to die so that, like, she can be free and she
Yeah.
doesn't have to, like, suffer for eternity in this way, you know? And
Yeah.
then, but then she literally is like, no, like,
I I
we're not
know,
doing, I know what you're trying to do here.
and we're not
I have a
doing
better
that.
plan. We're not doing that. Like,
I
which
know.
also I was a little bit like, okay, but isn't that how I would be if my husband was like trying to be like
Yeah.
sacrificial? And I would be like, okay,
You're
like,
like,
love
"No."
that. Really love the intention, but no, I'm going to come up with my own thing and do that. Like,
Yes!
relatable. So
I
relatable.
know. I know, I was just like, "Oh, come on."
Uh
Like, that was
huh.
his chance.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So you
Uh,
kinda mentioned in the beginning that this is very different than Shadow and Bone.
mm-hmm.
So, I haven't read Shadow and Bone, but I've seen the Netflix series, and so
Okay.
I kind of just wanted to know, like, how is her writing style different from this to that?
Yeah, I was kind of talking about like the juxtaposition. So Shadow and Bone is a YA
Mhm.
series. Still fantasy romance, but yeah, YA. And you can tell it's a YA versus this is an adult series, you
Yeah.
know? And like you notice where I was comparing to like you have Akatar and Throne of Glass, and like
Mhm.
Throne of Glass is YA. A
Yeah.
Court of Thorns and Roses is not. And there's like maybe the first 3 books of Throne of Glass should be YA, but otherwise, like, they're
Yeah.
so similar. Like, it feels like a publisher just pulled one out of the hat, you know, to
Yeah.
be like, this one's YA. You know, like,
Yep.
there's not a lot of reason. Where Shadow and Bone feels like it. Like, it feels like
Yeah.
it is geared towards a younger audience. I think, like, she's not, her writing is not quite as poetic. It's
Okay.
not like, you don't have like a ton of like the themes are really obvious in Shadow and
Yes.
Bone.
Yes.
Like you're not like, and I even rated Shadow and Bone lower, even though I found the
Okay.
plot maybe more satisfying. I think I put it as like a 3.5, somewhere in between like a
Okay.
three
That
five,
makes
3.4.
sense.
But I think because it was more predictable, because you
Mhm.
really like it was really clear where the characters were going and like the twist, like everything just makes a lot more sense in
Yep,
Shadow
that
and Bone.
makes
It's not
sense.
like, yeah, it's not convoluted. um it definitely is more fantasy and like, you know, it's the whole Grisha verse, that whole
Oh,
world and things
yeah.
like that. Like there's a lot more world building.
Mhm.
So, but literally they feel like 2 different authors. I mean, like
Really?
so different, like where this was like
Mhm.
felt like stunning writing in the familiar,
Yeah.
really complicated themes, like not a ton of world building, like we needed
Yeah.
more world building. Like Shadow and Bone is, granted, okay, I have just read the first 2 books,
Okay.
and I'm basically, I wouldn't even have considered, I probably after reading Shadow and Bone would not have read the second book, which is Siege and Storm,
Yep.
except for the fact that I've heard so many people who are obsessed with Six of
I
Crows.
was literally just going to ask you that if you were
Yes.
reading it because you wanted to read Six of Crows.
Yes. So I just want like the most world building before I
Yeah.
jump into Six of Crows because people are obsessed with it.
Yes.
So yeah, I don't know, but yeah, very, that one feels like very traditional, like what you would expect a fantasy romance to be. The
Yeah.
Familiar is like
Very
so
different.
different from
Yes.
anything else in the genre, which again is
Mhm.
what I liked about it, but also like
Yeah.
makes it like, I think it's a 4 star for me in part because I'm like, I think this is a book I'm going to think about for a long time.
You know what? I could actually totally see that. And I was
Yeah.
just gonna pull up because I did read Ninth House.
Yeah.
And I wanted to pull up what my rating was because
Mm-hmm.
I gave it 3 stars. Oh, bummer.
Mm.
That's funny because that's one that I still think about all the time.
Okay.
And so maybe I'll have to bump it up. But I feel like it's one of those 2 where I might need to reread because the magic is so complex and there is a lot where you're like, "Okay, where is this going? What are the themes of this?" Like, it leaves you questioning a lot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
That's
I would recommend it though. It's really
that's
good.
so interesting. That's
Mhm.
so interesting. Yeah, I think that's what the familiar is going to be. Like, was the
Yeah.
experience of reading it satisfying? No. Like, I genuinely no, it was not. But I think I'm going to think about it for so long. I
Yes.
also, okay, the other thing is I highlighted a lot of quotes in, like, there was so many
Ooh.
lines that I was like, this is so good. I'll pull
I
up
was
some on
gonna
my
say
Kindle.
I was, like, gonna ask you if you had them, so I wanted to see what
Yeah.
it was that you highlighted.
Yes. Let
Oh my
me.
gosh, that's so fun.
Yeah, I just like I feel like I paused like a couple times to like
Yeah.
tell my husband like, "Oh my gosh,
Guess what they just said?
listen to this quote." Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah, and I'm not an annotator. Like I
Yeah.
have ADHD, so the second I pause to like take notes, I'm like, "Wait, what was happening in the story?"
Yeah.
You know, like I get lost. um
Which is funny because so do I, but I'm, like, the complete opposite, where if I'm annotating, I will never go back and look at them, but it'll make me pause, and so I have to sit and think.
mm, okay, that makes sense. That
Yeah.
makes sense. Hmm. Okay. Okay, here is one. This is from page 34. So this is like my first highlight
Oh, I love it.
in the book is better to live in fear than in grinding discontent. Better to dare this new path than continue her slow, grim march down the road that had been chosen for her. At least the scenery would be different.
Ooh.
Mhm.
Okay. That is
Mhm.
beautiful. And I feel
Mhm.
like that honestly could be the theme of the book.
Yes. Yeah. Mhm.
So
Truly.
good highlight.
Thanks. Who knew? Who knew that was going to be the whole book?
I love it. I know. Oh, I love
Oh.
that though.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I have a few more. I'm trying to look through like what's like some interesting ones to like
Yeah,
read
no
through.
worries. I mean, it was just super poetic writing.
Yeah, I mean you kind of get like a feel for that. Oh,
Right.
this one also so good. I do remember literally pausing to read this out loud. I know what it is to lower yourself, to keep your eyes downcast, to seek invisibility. It is a danger to become nothing. You hope no one will look, so one day when you go to find yourself, only dust remains, ground down to nothing from sheer neglect.
Oof. That's hard.
Yeah. But
The
like,
emotion in that.
yes, yes. And that's like where like we keep saying like it's such beautiful writing. Like
Yeah.
I feel like we've been like pretty negative about like the
I
plot and
know.
the characters. But
I
like for
know.
real, I think people should read it because like she writes in a way like the
Right.
characters are not having a good time. You're not necessarily having a good time.
Yeah.
But like it's still like it's poetic, like the way
Yeah.
she's able to talk about. And I think like anyone who has gone through middle school can like hear that quote and think about trying to make yourself just like small and like not stand out and like
Mhm.
you know like and like you can feel it like I like you
Absolutely.
feel it like viscerally to
I
be
know.
like
Yeah.
yeah so I still think like stunning and that's where I'm like I'm gonna think
Yeah.
about this book.
I know.
I just didn't
Part
like
of me
reading
might
it.
actually go back because I didn't enjoy it either, and I think I even said that in my Goodreads rating, that it was like, "Wow, this was so beautiful," and, like, the more that I talk about it, the less I'm, like, hating on it, but maybe
Yeah.
I'll go back and read it someday now that I have, like, an actual, like, idea of what was going on in the book.
Yeah. Yeah, I like am curious after our conversation and then after the
Yeah.
book club like thinking about if the point of the book is to be like you can struggle and like
Mhm.
strive for like these other things but ultimately like we all serve someone and
Right.
like viewing it through that's the theme and it's a tragedy. I
Mhm.
wonder if I would like the book more.
Oh, I like that. I really
Mhm.
like that, actually. Because
Yeah.
having a different theme when you're going into something, like, really does change. Like, you always have, like, these expectations, and then when
Mhm.
things don't meet it, it's like, "Oh, that's such a bummer."
Yeah.
It's kind of like Ho Fast.
Yes. Truly.
We're like, "Oh my god, it's gonna be God tier, it's gonna be amazing," and then we're all like, "Oh."
Yeah. Wait, we're all confused.
We were all confused for sure.
Ugh, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah, so and I think, my expectation was, like I was like, "Oh, this is, like, historical fantasy romance." We have
Yes.
just read what feels like about 100 books in the fantasy genre,
Yes.
and particularly fantasy romance of,
Mhm.
like, character starts out really low, she's gonna overcome,
Yeah.
he's gonna be obsessed with her, like, all this, like, stuff, and that's what made it refreshing, but also where I
Yeah.
was like, yeah, it's fun to read an enemies to
Oh,
lovers. It's
yes.
fun to like that's why we like it, you know?
Exactly. That's why they keep writing these tropes. It's
Yeah.
because it's fun to write and it's fun to read.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah.
Oh gosh.
And even like Red Rising, right? Which, like, I
Yeah.
mean, both of us, that was another one our book club had mixed reviews, but we both loved
Oh my
it.
gosh, yeah,
Jenna,
literally loved
I
it.
was obsessed. Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, but again, like a very like that one is not like the romance is not a huge part of the
Oh, not
plot
at
at
all.
all. But like again, like the triumph and like the
Mhm.
struggle, like gaining, even though it still has a lot of dark themes, and I would say
Yeah.
maybe just as like similar seems even themes of like everyone is beholden
Mhm.
to someone, everyone serves someone, like
Oh, yeah.
but so, like, interesting to compare to be like,
Uh-huh.
they have actually similar themes, but such a different feel and experience
Very,
of, like,
very.
you end Red Rising and you're like, "Darrow, ah!"
You're like, "Come on!"
yes, and, like, you want him to keep overcoming and, like, the next
Mhm.
thing and, like, you're invested. Granted, I think
Right.
it's a lot faster paced
Maybe that's what
also.
was part of it too. It just
Yeah,
wasn't what I maybe was looking for at the moment with, like,
totally.
yeah.
Mhm.
But we kind of
Yeah.
always talk about that, like, if you've read a lot of fantasy romance, sometimes going and reading something else is really refreshing.
Mhm.
But I think I might just be in a moment right now where I want some, like, really high stakes, like, quick paced fantasy, and I'm like,
Mhm.
"Oh, and this just wasn't it." Like, maybe this could
Yeah,
be really good for somebody who's looking for that, like, slower paced type
totally.
of book.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would say this was straight up a slow-paced book, but I'm a
Yeah.
person whose preference is, like, fast-paced,
Me
you
too,
know?
me too.
I'm like, "Maybe I need to go read some, like, thrillers or something."
I
Like,
know.
something that's, like, just intense and high stakes, and then you're
Yeah.
out, you know?
Which, like, on that note, because 'cause we've been raving about it so hard, but have you read the Glacian trilogy by Stacey McEwen?
Okay, no, but we did talk about how you and Jenna have been raving about it at
Oh
book club.
my god, it is so good. Like, highly
Ah!
recommend if you're looking for that fast pace
Yeah.
and, like, fun romantasy. It's got lots of good romance, like,
Okay.
highly, highly recommend.
Okay, I mean, that's great. That's great. Golden Sun just came in
Oh my
on my
gosh.
Libby, so I'm like,
Ah!
I
Oh
gotta
my
go read it. Yeah.
gosh. I
Mhm.
love that. We are about halfway through Morning Star,
Okay.
and I feel like the series just keeps getting better.
Uh,
It's
do
so
you
amazing.
do you think, obviously this is not a Red Rising podcast, but do you
Yeah.
think you're gonna read all, is it 6 books out now?
It is.
Okay, are you gonna read 6 or are you gonna stop at 3?
Oh, that's a good question. We've been kind of debating it because, I mean, I don't know if you can see, but those are the books, and they're massive.
Oh,
Maybe not,
yeah.
but they are huge. They are, like, literally massive books, and so we're like, "Do we want to continue on? Do we wanna just do the first 3?" Like, we have not even decided yet.
Yeah. Yeah. And does it
Well, yeah.
change characters? Like, it's the same
I've
world, but
heard
changes
so I
characters after?
Yeah, so I've heard that the first trilogy is different than the second trilogy. I just don't
Okay.
know who the second trilogy is, so
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Anyways.
I know, but it is really exciting. And how exciting that for our September book club, we're doing Harry Potter!
I'm so excited.
Me too.
Okay, wait, Shelby.
Yeah.
You have not read Harry Potter,
No,
correct?
I have not.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited for the podcast. I'm so excited for the
Me
book club. Like, I can't wait.
I know, it's gonna be so fun.
Okay, I know we had talked about previously, like in person, but I had never read the Harry Potter books and
Yeah?
just read them last year for the
Oh my
first time. So
gosh!
I've only read them as an adult. I didn't have any of the nostalgia.
And
And
how was
I
it?
loved it. That's what, like, a lot of people,
Really?
ACOTAR is what gets them into reading. Like,
Yep.
it was the Harry Potter series for me.
Oh my
Like,
gosh.
I was, like, not really reading fiction at all at that
Oh
point.
my
And, like,
gosh.
yeah, it started the obsession. And then in my
That's so
quest,
special.
yeah, to find, like, a series that would, like, engage me and capture me as
Yeah.
much is how I found ACOTAR. And then
Oh my
found you
gosh.
guys and got obsessed with all things, you know.
I love it
The
so
Sarah
much.
J. Maas cult. Yeah.
I know, for real. Oh my god. I know we've had a bunch of people like comment on our book club TikToks and stuff, and they're like, "Oh, an ACOTAR book club." And I'm like, "No, we're just doing
Yeah.
ACOTAR right now." I was like, "We cover a ton of different things. It's not just ACOTAR, unfortunately."
Right. Also, like, the name of your book club is not from that
I
series. Like,
know.
it's not an ACOTAR reference.
I know. Have you read From Blood and Ash?
No. I
It's
haven't
so
yet.
good.
It's on the list, on the TBR. Always.
And then it's funny, that's another thing that we always have people say is they're like, "We just read some From Blood and Ash. I understand where your name comes from."
I know, I'm like, I have to read it because I'm in Miss Willa's book club. Like, so I have to read it.
Oh my gosh, I love it so much.
Yeah.
And I'm so pumped too. So I've seen all of the Harry Potter movies. I've seen them all, I think, once.
Oh my gosh, so not even like you haven't like rewatched them or anything.
Nope. I think I was a sophomore in college where I was like, "Oh, you know what? Like I've got like a lot of time off for winter break. I'll just watch Harry Potter."
What a college
And
thing.
I know, for real. I was like, I have literally nothing else to do. And so, yeah, I watched all of them and then literally haven't done anything with it since. And I know that's what got Jenna into reading too. So I'm like, well, now I have to read it. And we've been also kind of deciding on, do we want to do a full reread or like that's a lot.
Yeah, it is. It is. I would say I think it's like really nice because book one is like geared towards kids, you know? So if like you want like emotionally, you're like, I want a fluffy read, but I don't want it to just be like a fluffy romance book. I feel like is always what we talk about. Like it like fills that, like it's like almost cozy fantasy, you know?
Oh, I love that.
Yes. Yeah.
I love that.
And then like by the end, like the last couple books, I would say is like fantasy. Like I sobbed, I yelled, like
oh my gosh.
they're like genuinely so gripping. So I think you should read them all regardless on if you like do podcasts about all of them, but
I just need to read the whole thing.
Right. Yeah, you know.
Well, on that note, are you reading anything else right now?
Well, obviously I'm reading Twilight and Midnight Sun.
Oh, yes, I love that so much.
Yes. We're reading it super slow, which is also different for me.
Yeah.
We're doing about so we're breaking up the books. We're doing about 150 pages an episode.
That's nice. That's doable for sure.
Yes, because that was part of it is we were like, it's not realistic. We both work full time. We're not gonna like
I get it.
Yeah, yes you do. Yes. So reading that really slowly. And then I just started reading the City of Bones series. I'm
Did
doing
you
as
really?
a reread. Yes.
Oh my gosh. That's one that I've heard about, but I haven't read that one.
Oh my gosh, I was obsessed in high school. Obsessed, obsessed,
Oh
obsessed.
my
And then
gosh.
I had read I think the first 4 books in that trilogy and the
Mhm.
first 3 books in the prequel trilogy she wrote. But then like kind of fell off, stopped reading fiction,
Yeah.
and so it had been on my list to be like, okay, I want to reread this and see like if it
Yeah.
holds up. And I was at a used bookstore and saw like the first 3 books were
Oh
all
my
there.
gosh.
Yeah, so I picked them up and it has been so fun.
Oh
Okay,
my
I have to tell you the funniest story though.
gosh. Yes, I love it.
Of like,
Just fill
here's
me
what
in.
here's what reminded me that I was like, should I read City of Bones again?
Oh
Okay,
my gosh.
I saw a TikTok that was talking about the psych ward for like fantasy books.
Oh my god.
And he's like talking about like how like all these girls on like book talk are crazy and we're all in this psych ward and it's like making fun of all the tropes, right? And then he's like, and it's like the welcome tour through the psych ward, and
Oh
then
my god.
the guy is like, don't be freaked out by the incest wing, it's just Cassandra Clare and Game of Thrones fans. And I was like,
And probably Penelope Douglas fans.
yeah, probably. But then I was like, wait, because Sandra Clare was one of my favorite authors in high school.
Oh
I
my
do not, I
god.
remember 0 incest. Like, what? And so then it like sent me on such a trip. And so then I had
Yeah.
to Google it. And I found out when I went to Google it to be like,
Mhm.
wait, did I just literally like let myself, did I block that from my memory?
Did you?
Yes, 100%. It's in book 1. It's so
You're
overt.
kidding me.
Yes, I just loved the love interest, and I didn't care
Yeah.
that it turned out. Well, I don't know if you want spoilers, but
No, it's fine. You can tell me.
okay. Yeah, they're siblings.
I
They're
probably won't
full
read
up
it.
straight brother and sister,
Oh my
same mom,
god.
same dad, and they're like the
Stop.
main love interest for the whole series. They're the main
What?
love interest, and they find out in book 1 they're siblings.
That is so Game of Thronesy.
Yes,
Oh my
yes,
god.
yeah.
Oh my
Anyways,
gosh, that's crazy.
yeah, I don't remember like how far it goes or anything like that, or if it's just like now like tension, but they're definitely like into each other.
Oh my
Anyways,
god.
so
That's
TBD.
crazy.
But when I like Googled it to confirm or deny, then she's still writing. She's still writing these books.
Oh my gosh. Like in the same series? Or
so it's like now she's in a different series that's the
okay.
same world.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so it's like different main characters, but I'm like, I think she has like maybe like 20 to 25 books out that are in like the Shadowhunter world.
Oh
So
my gosh.
I'm like a little like intimidated also to be like,
Oh
how far do I want
yeah.
to reread in these?
Oh my
And at
gosh.
what point do you stop?
Exactly. I know.
Yeah.
Well, I kind of feel that way sometimes with some other series. I'm like, if you're not enjoying it, should we just stop? But then I'm like, I
Yeah.
can't not read the next ones. Especially
Right.
because we're right in it when they're coming out.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Or then you hear like of one person who then like you stopped reading and then like 3 books later
Yeah.
people are like, it's the hot book, and you're like, well, now I have to
Well, now
go
I have
back
to
and
get
reread
there.
all of them again, you know? So you
Yeah.
might as well just stay caught up.
Exactly. And that's actually really funny that you say that because so I read Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to finish out the series. I'm going to do it. And I read like the first couple of pages and I was like, I think I need to reread Mistborn. So before I do that, I'm probably going to reread Mistborn.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, you're
That's
saying like you
funny.
started like the second half of the
Mhm.
series? Yeah.
Or I started the second book in the first part.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, yeah, I think I need to go back and reread this. I think it's just been too long.
Yeah, totally. I'm worried about that with starting Golden Sun. Like I'm like, what if I
There's
don't
so
remember? There's
much.
so many names.
I know. They kind of, at least in Golden Sun, they kind of go over who people are again.
Okay.
And on the front cover, they list out everybody.
Oh,
It's amazing.
ideal.
Mhm.
Ideal.
Exactly.
Take note, authors.
Exactly. It's
Please
like,
do.
please give us the
Yes.
family names.
Yes, literally.
The family names and the maps and the plot.
Right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I love it. Well, Kallie, do you have anything else?
No, thank you so much. It was such a
Course.
hoot and a half
Oh my
to
gosh, I love it.
chat all about the familiar.
Yes, it was. And I think we both kind of realized that we might have liked it more than we thought we did.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, I still am confused about my own opinion, but like,
Me too.
it's great. It's great.
Awesome. Well, Kallie, thank you so much. This was so
Yeah.
much fun. And I can't wait to see you again at book club next month.
Yes, for Harry Potter.
I love it.
Thanks, Shelby.
All right, we'll see you guys later.
Bye.